Extreme right to Miramudi. Going well there was Tamara Davis, who's coming through. Is she going to get there? Richardson easing away through the second half over the last third.
For nearly 4 decades, one number has stood above every woman who has ever stepped onto a 100-meter track. 10.49. The world record set by Florence Griffith Joyner in 1988 has survived generations of champions. Olympic legends have chased it. World champions have come close. Some of the fastest women in history have spent their entire careers trying to reach it, and every one of them fell short. But now, something feels different. There is one athlete whose journey has become impossible to ignore. She isn't just winning races. She's changing the conversation. Every time Sha'Carri Richardson steps into the starting blocks, fans begin asking the same question: could she finally be the one to challenge the most untouchable record in track and field? What's remarkable is that this story almost ended before it truly began. Behind the colorful hair, unforgettable confidence, and explosive speed is a young woman who has endured heartbreaking loss, crushing disappointment, and one of the most public setbacks in modern athletics. Many believed her career would never fully recover. Instead, she returned stronger, faster, and more determined than ever. But that isn't even the most incredible part. Her greatest challenge may still be ahead. With the prime years of her career unfolding, every race brings her one step closer to history. The question is no longer whether Sha'Carri Richardson belongs among the world's elite. It's whether she can accomplish what no woman has done in 37 years, and rewrite one of the greatest records in sports forever. Long before packed stadiums chanted her name, before cameras followed her every move, and before the world debated whether she could become the next great sprinting legend, Sha'Carri Richardson was simply a little girl growing up in South Dallas, Texas. She didn't grow up surrounded by luxury or endless opportunities. Instead, she was raised by 2 women who would shape every part of her future. Her grandmother, Betty Hart, affectionately known as Big Mama, and her aunt, Sha'Carri Richardson. While her biological parents were absent for much of her childhood, these 2 women became the foundation of her life. Years later, Sha'Carri would often describe her family as her greatest source of strength. And if you look closely at her story, it's easy to understand why. Her journey into track wasn't carefully planned by coaches or talent scouts. It started in the most ordinary way imaginable. As a child, she loved racing her aunt up a hill toward her grandmother's car. There were no medals waiting at the finish line. No crowds cheering. Just a determined little girl trying to beat an adult who refused to let her win. That decision would change everything. Her aunt never gave her easy victories simply to build confidence. Every race had to be earned. Every step mattered. Then one day, while still in elementary school, Sha'Carri finally crossed the finish line first. It wasn't an Olympic race. It wasn't even an official competition. But it was the moment she realized something extraordinary. She was fast. Really fast. Not long afterward, another seemingly ordinary moment would become one of the most important memories of her childhood. Inside her grandmother's home hung a plaque filled with medals that had belonged to her aunt during her own days as a track athlete. Most children might have looked at those awards and walked away. Sha'Carri couldn't stop staring. She asked her grandmother if she could have medals like those one day. Big Mama didn't hand her a dream. She handed her a challenge. "If you want medals," she essentially told her, "you'll have to earn them." Those words stayed with her. From that day forward, running wasn't just something she enjoyed. It became a mission. As she entered organized track, coaches quickly realized they weren't looking at an ordinary young athlete. Her natural acceleration, explosive stride, and fierce competitive spirit separated her from almost everyone around her. By the time she reached Carter High School in Dallas, she wasn't just winning races. She was dominating them. State championship after state championship followed, And before long, colleges across the country knew exactly who she was. Recruiters weren't simply looking at another talented sprinter. They were watching someone who seemed capable of becoming one of the fastest women America had ever produced. That attention eventually led her to Louisiana State University. For most athletes, college is a time to develop gradually. Sha'Carri had other plans. Almost immediately, she began producing performances that stunned the track and field world. In 2019, during the NCAA Outdoor Championships, she delivered the kind of day athletes spend entire careers chasing. First came the 100 meters. She crossed the finish line in 10.75 seconds, a remarkable performance that shattered the long-standing world under 20 record. Before people had fully processed what they had witnessed, she returned to the track for the 200 meters. Then she did it again. Another world under 20 record fell. 2 historic performances. One afternoon. 19 years old. Track and field suddenly had a brand new superstar. The reaction was immediate. Commentators praised her fearless style. Fans admired the confidence she displayed before and after every race. Her colorful hair, long nails, and unmistakable personality made her impossible to ignore. But underneath that confidence was something even more impressive: results. The stopwatch doesn't care about personality. It only measures speed. And Sha'Carri had plenty of it. After that unforgettable NCAA season, turning professional wasn't simply the next logical step. It was inevitable. The expectations surrounding her exploded almost overnight. Every race became another opportunity to prove she belonged among the world's elite. But with rising fame came something else. Comparisons. People weren't just calling her the future of American sprinting anymore. Some began mentioning one of the biggest names the sport has ever known, Florence Griffith Joyner. It was an enormous comparison, one that carried both excitement and impossible expectations. Could this fearless young runner from South Dallas really become the athlete capable of challenging one of sport's most legendary records? At that point, nobody knew the answer. But before Sha'Carri Richardson could fully chase history, life was about to test her in ways no race ever could. And what happened next nearly changed the course of her career forever. By the summer of 2021, Sha'Carri Richardson looked unstoppable. She had become the face of a new generation of American sprinting. Every race attracted more attention. Every interview showcased the confidence that had made fans fall in love with her. When she arrived at the U.S. Olympic trials in Eugene, Oregon, many believed they were watching the beginning of an Olympic journey that could define an era. Then came one of the most emotional moments of her life. Sha'Carri stormed down the track to win the 100-meter final, securing what appeared to be her place on Team USA for the Tokyo Olympics. Moments after crossing the finish line, she ran into the stands and embraced her grandmother. It was a celebration filled with joy, relief, and years of sacrifice finally paying off. But behind that smile was unimaginable heartbreak. Just days before the race, Richardson had learned that her biological mother had passed away. Even more shocking was how she found out. According to Richardson, she received the news from a reporter during the Olympic trials rather than from a family member. In an instant, the happiest week of her athletic career became one of the most painful. She later described feeling overwhelmed by grief and struggling to process emotions she never expected to face during the biggest competition of her life. Then the story took another dramatic turn. Shortly after the trials, Richardson tested positive for THC, the primary psychoactive substance found in cannabis. She publicly acknowledged using cannabis in a state where it was legal, explaining that it was an attempt to cope with the emotional shock of losing her mother. The consequences were immediate. Her Olympic trials result was invalidated, and she received a 1-month suspension under the anti-doping rules that were in effect at the time. That suspension ended her hopes of competing in the individual 100 meters at the Tokyo Olympics. The reaction was unlike anything track and field had seen in years. Many fans expressed sympathy, believing the punishment failed to account for the extraordinary personal circumstances Richardson had faced. Others argued that athletes are responsible for following the rules regardless of the situation. The debate reached far beyond sports, becoming part of a broader public conversation about grief, mental health, and anti-doping policies. Throughout it all, Richardson never tried to hide from what had happened. She accepted responsibility for the rule violation, while also speaking openly about the emotional pain that led to her decision. Her honesty earned respect from many supporters, even as critics questioned whether she would ever regain the momentum she had lost. Returning to competition proved far more difficult than anyone expected. Later that year, she raced against several of the Olympic medalists at the Prefontaine Classic, but finished well behind the leaders. For some observers, it seemed as though the pressure, criticism, and months of emotional turmoil had taken a heavy toll. The challenges continued into 2022. At the World Athletics Championships in Eugene, Richardson failed to advance from the 100-meter semifinals. For an athlete once viewed as the future of women's sprinting, it was another painful setback. Questions that had once focused on world records suddenly shifted toward whether she could return to the top at all. Many athletes might have allowed those disappointments to define them. Sha'Carri Richardson chose a different path. Instead of disappearing from the sport, she quietly rebuilt. She refined her training, stayed focused on improving, and worked to regain both her confidence and consistency. There were no guarantees that the comeback would succeed, but those closest to the sport could see that she hadn't given up on herself. Then came the World Athletics Championships in Budapest in 2023. Even reaching the final wasn't straightforward. Richardson advanced from the semifinals as one of the fastest non-automatic qualifiers, leaving some fans wondering if she had enough left to challenge for the title. What happened next stunned the world. Running from lane 9, often considered one of the least favorable lanes in a championship final, Richardson produced the race of her life. She surged past the field to win the gold medal in a championship record 10.65 seconds, defeating some of the biggest names in women's sprinting. Just 2 years after missing the Olympics and facing intense public scrutiny, she stood alone at the top of the podium as world champion. It was one of the greatest comeback stories in modern track and field. But even after becoming the fastest woman in the world at night, the biggest challenge of her career still remained. Because one legendary record continued to cast a shadow over every conversation about Sha'Carri Richardson, and the pursuit of that historic mark was only beginning. Winning the world title in Budapest changed everything. For years, Sha'Carri Richardson had been viewed as one of the sport's brightest talents. After Budapest, she was no longer just a rising star. She was the woman everyone wanted to beat. The doubts that had followed her since 2021 didn't disappear overnight, but they grew much quieter. Her performance had answered the biggest question of all. She could overcome adversity and still reach the top of the world. Yet the next chapter of her story proved that greatness is never a straight line. In 2024, Richardson arrived at the Paris Olympics carrying enormous expectations. As the reigning world champion, many believed this was finally her moment to capture individual Olympic gold. Millions of fans tuned in, convinced they were about to witness history. But championship racing has a way of surprising everyone. In the women's 100-meter final, Richardson didn't get the explosive start she had hoped for. Despite closing strongly in the second half of the race, she finished second behind Julian Alfred of St. Lucia, earning the Olympic silver medal. For some athletes, silver would have felt like a disappointment. For Richardson, it represented something much deeper. Only 3 years earlier, she had watched the Tokyo Olympics from home after one of the most difficult periods of her life. Now she stood on the Olympic podium with an individual medal around her neck. It wasn't the color she dreamed about, but it was proof that perseverance had brought her back to the biggest stage in sports. Her Olympic journey wasn't over yet. A few days later, she took the baton for the final leg of the women's 4x100-meter relay. When Richardson received it, the United States wasn't in the lead. Everything came down to one final sprint. With her trademark power and determination, she surged past the competition and carried Team USA across the finish line first, helping secure Olympic gold. It was the perfect reminder of what makes Richardson so dangerous. Even when the pressure is at its highest, she has shown she can deliver unforgettable performances. Then came another challenge. In early 2025, Richardson dealt with a hamstring injury that disrupted months of preparation. Sprinting is a sport decided by hundredths of a second, and even a minor injury can change an entire season. Despite fighting back to compete, she wasn't at her absolute best during the World Championships. She still reached the final, but this time she finished outside the medals. For some critics, it was a reason to question whether she could continue chasing history. For those who have followed her career, it was simply another obstacle. If there's one lesson Richardson's journey has taught the world, it's that setbacks have never been the final chapter. Every major disappointment has been followed by another comeback. That brings us back to the number that has defined women's sprinting for nearly 4 decades. 10.49. Florence Griffith Joyner's world record has survived generation after generation of elite athletes. It has become one of the most iconic marks in all of sports. Richardson's personal best of 10.65 still leaves a significant gap, but in elite sprinting, the smallest improvements can make history. Coaches and analysts often point out that sprinters frequently reach their peak in their mid to late 20s, meaning Richardson may still have some of her fastest years ahead of her if she remains healthy. That's why the conversation refuses to disappear. Every time she enters a major race, fans don't just ask whether she'll win. They ask whether they'll witness something unforgettable. Beyond the medals and the records, Richardson's legacy is already taking shape. She has inspired young athletes to embrace who they are without apology. Her confidence, style, and authenticity have helped bring new fans to track and field. More importantly, her willingness to speak openly about grief, setbacks, and mental health has shown that even the fastest people in the world face struggles away from the track. Perhaps that's what makes her story so compelling. It's not simply about speed. It's about resilience. It's about refusing to let one painful chapter define an entire career. As the road to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics begins, another fascinating possibility emerges. Richardson will be entering what many consider the prime years for a sprinter. She'll have the experience of multiple global championships, the confidence of an Olympic champion in the relay, and unfinished business in the individual 100 meters. Will she finally claim the Olympic gold that has eluded her? Can she move even closer to Flo-Jo's legendary mark? No one can answer those questions today. But history has taught us one thing. Every time people have doubted Sha'Carri Richardson, she has found a way to surprise them. And that may be the strongest reason to believe her greatest race hasn't happened yet. Sha'Carri Richardson's story is about far more than fast times and finish lines. It's a story of resilience, family, heartbreak, redemption, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. Whether or not she eventually breaks Florence Griffith Joyner's legendary world record, she has already inspired millions by proving that setbacks don't have to define the rest of your journey. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe Sha'Carri Richardson will one day break Flo-Jo's incredible 10.49-second world record? And looking ahead to the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, do you think she'll finally win the individual Olympic gold medal that has remained just out of reach? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We read every comment, and we'd love to know your prediction. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more powerful stories about the world's greatest athletes, unforgettable moments, and the history behind sports' biggest achievements, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our